today's video is all about creative content that converts and Facebook. So I wrote the title this way because there's a lot of information going all over the internet right now regarding all the recent Facebook changes, and I wanted to create this video, and actually I planned, ironically, on creating a video about content creation. And it just so happened that this morning, as I was sitting down and going through all the new Facebook updates and changes and reading about what was going on with them, I realized that a lot of the changes in Facebook were really going to enforce marketers to have better and more creative content, which is really, I think, the whole point of social media and internet marketing and marketing in general, but it's kind of taking that to the next level. And so one of the things that I love to do most for my business, and where I believe where my expertise is in creating content that grabs attention. Now, at the same time, my background is in direct response marketing, which is all about quantifiable marketing that uses influence tactics in an ethical way that leads to sales. So it's the combination with Next Door Neighbor Marketing, what I do, it's a combination of creative content and direct response marketing that leads to what we do best. But anyways, I want to get into all that. I have a lot of stuff to go over here today. And so the first thing I want to discuss is my 4E system that I use for creative content. Now, I will say that I have done some research online, and I've seen other people who have mentioned the 3E system. And the reason I have the 4E system is because I have an extra E. So the first E in the system is entertain, which obviously just means people like to be entertained. I think we can all agree that, especially with TV and video online and social media and how easy it is to share video and share music, we are in a very entertainment-focused world. It's why actresses and actors and musicians and celebrities are all followed a lot, because they're in the entertainment industry. And whether you agree with it or not, they are looked up to in a lot of ways and are role models, and we are very entertainment-focused. And people like to be entertained a lot. And at the same time, our attention spans, I call them flea-sized attention spans. I assume fleas, I'm just assuming, that fleas don't have very good attention spans. And we've gone that direction in a lot of ways just because of technology and the internet and just the overload of information. So the first E is entertain. The second one is educate. Now, educate is where you would provide, I believe, a lot of your value. I think people would maybe definitely find value in entertainment, but the most of the value would be in education. And the educate part would be mostly about your expertise, having to do with what you sell, what you do, not promoting your services, but providing free, putting your best foot forward, like I always say, and providing free information that gets people past a couple of roadblocks toward their ultimate goal, which automatically gives you some authority, because if you're able to talk about some things, especially if some people go and take your information and apply it and have success, that's going to lead to authority and also maybe to some social proof. The third E is enlighten. And enlighten is really telling more about your business, talking about your business, the services you offer, especially with social media, some inside information where people feel they're more connected with your brand and your business, because you're kind of giving them the inside look to some things. You don't have to tell them everything, but just something that makes them feel more connected to you. And that can also be a form of social proof, because enlighten could be testimonials, or maybe not so much testimonials, but just having someone else outside talk about your business. And when it's not you talking about it, someone else, it's 1,000 times more powerful. So I think social proof comes in there. And the fourth E, which is the one that I add and which differentiates our content and at least our mindset, I believe, from other people who create content for people, is exchange. And when I'm talking about exchange, this is where something is exchanging between people. This is where your call to action is. This is where you're getting people to opt in on an email list. You're asking them to like something. You're asking them to recommend something. And ultimately, you're asking them to exchange money for your products and services. And it's all about taking all 4 of these and strategically knowing them how to put them in a certain order. Because sometimes exchange would be first. Sometimes you would you'd say maybe an email opt-in. It's like, provide your email address and you're going to get this free report, and you're going to provide them with all this value. There may be a video series you send them after. You're sending them to your blog. But the exchange is first. So it might be an exchange where they're opting in. They're exchanging their email address, and you're giving them free, valuable information for that. And in that valuable information, then you're entertaining, you're educating, you're enlightening. And then as you keep doing that, you're going to get to a final exchange where you make them a customer. And so these aren't necessarily in that order. And I do have to say that a lot of what I'm talking about here, especially with content, I refer a lot to what are called the 7 Weapons of Influence by Robert Cialdini, who I know I mentioned before. It's just really makes you think about what makes people do things, what incites them to do things, entices them, and how we act as human beings. And you need to think about that stuff when you're creating marketing and when you're creating content. And I say that because authority would be one of the 7 weapons of influence. Social proof is one of the 7 weapons of influence. And also liking and reciprocation, which is just liking a person affects that, and reciprocation, where there's just reciprocation generally built into society where you will help someone with something with the expectation that you will get it back. Usually that would be from the other person, but it may not be. It's just your assumption that the world works that way, and it generally does. But I guess you would say you want to entice reciprocation, where in a marketing or a sales way, when you're putting your best foot forward, you're over-delivering value. At some point, if you're doing the right things when the timing's right, that person's going to reciprocate back to you, which fits into entertaining and educating. If you're entertaining and educating and doing these 2 things, that's where a lot of the value is. You support that value with the enlightening, and then the reciprocation will occur with the exchange, which would be usually money. So that's the 4E system. And the reason I'm explaining this as content is because I say all marketing really is content. Whether it's something you're putting on social networks, whether it's an ad you put in the yellow pages, whether it's a sales letter you send in direct mail, even just a status update, a video, whatever it is, all marketing is content. So it's really important. And so what's really happening and what's starting to happen with social media, and especially with these recent Facebook changes, is that people in the social media realm, marketing is sort of turning into publishing, where it's very, very content driven and very deep, rich content that gets people engaged. And I think what's happening sometimes is people worry so much about creating stories, which is really important, and doing the entertaining and maybe even doing the educating, maybe getting to enlightening, but they're never getting to the part where they're getting down to the exchange, at least not asking for it or trying to entice it. It's all about brand recognition and awareness, which is all really important. But I think in a lot of ways that should be considered a side effect. Now, I'm not saying you have to be pushy with your sales, but when you continue to do this stuff, people will accept your sales pitches. And at the same time, if you piss off a couple of people at some point because you've pitched them, if you give them all this value and you piss them off because you give them 1 or 2 sales pitches, then you don't even want them as a customer anyways. The mentality with a marketer, and I would take this with a grain of salt, is that if you're not pissing someone off by noon, you're not doing your job, because you need to alienate somebody. Otherwise, you're not grabbing the attention of anyone. So it's extremely important. And so the way I'm saying that, I'm talking about the exchange and the call to action. This all comes back to my background in direct response marketing and something that's quantifiable, which is, you put an ad somewhere, it has a certain headline, it has certain copy, it's in a certain place, and you're able to track it from when the person takes the whatever the offer is, takes the call to action, and they purchase a product. You know which ad they came from, and down to the cent how much that ad's brought in for you. Now, when you start getting into all the social media stuff, this isn't 100% yet. The tools are coming out there. There's this engagement stuff. There's the whole branding thing, which branding can't do this to the extent that direct response can. but it's about having the mindset, and that's what we have, and the tools that are improving to determine that ROI. And at the same time, social media is something that can be ingrained in many facets of your company, with customer service, product development, HR stuff, things that are cost savings that may be hard to put into an exact dollar figure outside of marketing. So anyways, now, like I promised, we'll get into the Facebook stuff. Mainly because from what I've been reading and what I've been seeing on Facebook, they are really driving that marketers need to have great content. And before I can even explain this stuff, I needed to at least get through this and make you understand how important it is that you're doing this stuff. Otherwise, you can go out and use 50 different sources of media outside of social media, direct mail, I don't know, mobile marketing, blasting out text messages, I'm TV, radio, whatever. But if the message isn't right, if the audience isn't right, if you're not creating this type of content, it's not going to matter. You just get distracted by the shiny object syndrome that I've talked about in another blog post. So, anyways, let's get to these changes with Facebook. The first one is the timeline profile, which has not been, as of today, has not been released to everybody. You can sign up for the beta and make your profile look like it now. And this is really depicting the storytelling mindset of Facebook now, which means when you go to this timeline, the timeline on the profile goes all the way back as far as you posted stuff in Facebook, but you can continue to go back and add pictures from when you were growing up or your kids were growing up, all the way back to when you were born, and really have a scrapbook of everything that's happened in your life. And I'm not sure to which degree users are going to jump on board with this. That's to be seen. It could be that it's going to be great for people who have little kids now that want to put stuff on Facebook, and they'll have that when they're older. But regardless, it's still a storytelling mentality. And storytelling is really powerful. It's one of the most powerful ways you can have, even in old school sales letters that get sent out in direct mail or something, where it's a letter that you're reading. Is the whole star story solution. It's one of the formulas where you have a star, the person who's writing the letter, or you're writing it about the star who's the face of the company, what their stories are, what their struggle was. That's what connects people. And then the solution. And then, the solution comes from the story. This is how they solve the problem, and this is how they can help you solve it. And everyone loves a story. The second, it's like when you're listening to somebody talk, you may be zoning out. The second the language just turns into the story mode. The second you hear it sound like it's going into a story, if they're even just a decent storyteller, you perk up and you listen. And so it's just really important in regards to all of the content. So timeline profile, storytelling, and that's the mindset. Number 2, Newsfeed Control. And so with the whole subscribe buttons that they've added to Facebook, where if people turn subscribing on their profiles, you don't even have to become a friend to see their status updates. You can just click on subscribe and get that stuff. As part of that system in the new news feed, if you've seen, the news feed is separated now, where there's top stories on the top of the main news feed, and then which aren't chronological, and then there's the recent stories below it, which is chronological. Now, the top stories are generated when you don't log into Facebook. So if you're not on Facebook for even an hour, let's say, the top stories that are the Facebook algorithm deems that are important for you are going to be at the top, and that's based on a multitude of factors, including where they are in your different friends list that you've created, which we'll talk about in a minute, how many comments and likes and shares and recommends have come from the post there. And at the same time, you can now, those top stories, people have more control over their own newsfeed again, where they can click on the blue button next to the top story and eliminate it. And Facebook learns that stuff. If someone posts something and it's getting, comments and whatnot, and it's high on your top story list, and you say, nope, I don't want it there, Facebook has learned you don't want top stories from that person, and you don't want top stories about that content, and you're not going to get it again. So from the other side, from the marketing perspective, you want to make sure you are providing killer content that gets you into those top stories. Otherwise, people aren't going to see them. It's going to get buried in the recent feed. Now, those stories and whatnot will show up in the small ticker on the side, but that happens continuously. So that's only for people who are on Facebook at the time you post it. But for all the people who aren't on Facebook all the time, because they're busy, and when they do log on Facebook after even maybe a couple of hours, if you're not in that top story list, they might not see you, or there's less of a chance that they will see you. So once again, killer content where people say, yeah, I want to see that in my feed all the time because they provide really good entertaining stuff, especially on Facebook, and then weaving in the education and the enlightening through that. Number 3, and this gets into Facebook fan pages. Facebook fan pages, I feel, have kind of taken a beating from this. I mean, well, there's some stuff going on here, but the timeline stuff, personal profiles have changed a lot. With the fan pages, people can now comment on your fan page without liking the page. So now people can engage on a page, make a comment on a post that maybe a friend liked or they commented on and they saw it from their friend in the newsfeed, and they comment on it, but they don't have to like the page, which means they'll engage with you and back away, and then it doesn't show up in their own personal newsfeed. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that works out. But once again, that is an example of having more exposure because the information can get out there more. People can comment, and they can comment, and they don't have to make that commitment. So it's more exposure and less commitment, which is kind of the theme of some of this stuff with Facebook, where they want to get people to share more stuff without having to feel they're making that ultimate commitment of saying they actually like something. So more exposure and less commitment, and which again is another reason why you want to have killer content on your fan page. So when someone goes there, now they don't have to click on like to comment. They can comment and leave. So you need to have something killer on there so they say, hey, I want to have this in my own feed, and they're going to click the like button. And number 4 is like button expansion. So Facebook has done something which I deem the degrees of commitment, which means developers, I think Facebook's going to create some of their own buttons, but developers are going to be able to create a button that, as far as I know, is going to be able to say whatever they want. So you can have, not just I liked something, but I read something, or I watched something, I watched a video, or what was the other one? I listened to something if it's music. So you don't have to necessarily say I like it. It could be just saying, I read this. It doesn't mean you actually endorse it or you like it. It's just that you've read it. You could actually really hate it, which is kind of interesting because I think it's actually going to bring some negativity into Facebook because from what I know so far, if a developer wants to create the dislike button that people have talked about forever, that is going to create an explosion of sharing, and it's really going to change social media because Facebook has been trying to keep it sort of like the Disney World, the happiest place on earth in social media, where you can't dislike anything. And I think there's going to be some more negativity, and it's going to really make it really important that you're managing your social media correctly and keeping an eye on it. And like I said, this is all about degrees of commitment, and all of this has to do with having entertaining, educating, and enlightening content. With the ultimate thing being that you're ultimately leading to an exchange, which is the sales, that content that converts to sales. The number 5 I just wanted to throw out there with Facebook ads is with these new friend lists that they've had friend lists for a long time, but now they've made them automated. They have the smart lists where you can add close friends and you have family and whatnot. I've seen a lot of my friends adding in education they didn't have before, adding in places where they didn't work, adding in family. It's all demographics info that those lists need to be able to group them properly, which only helps people that have Facebook ads, make it more targeted. It's going to add a lot more people into these demographic categories that can be then hit with targeted Facebook ads. So I just want to throw that in there because that's something I've noticed. And I think that pretty much covers everything. So if you are interested in using all this stuff, because really all these 4 pieces are puzzle pieces, and you need to know the strategies, and you need to understand how they work with the 7 weapons of influence, and what order they need to go in to serve the goals of your business. those are things that we do at Next Door Neighbor Marketing. And the first step we take with our clients is we do a free audit. And with the audit, we go through your entire social media presence. We go through stuff like this, and we provide you with a list of action-oriented recommendations that you can then apply to your social media and internet presence. So if you're interested, please just click the link below, submit your info, and we'll get back to you within 1 business day. Thanks, and make it a great day.